Biden ramps up nuclear brinkmanship on his way out the door. The New York Times reports that the Biden administration has authorized Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles to strike Russian and North Korean military targets inside Russia. Yet another dangerous escalation of nuclear brinkmanship in this horrific proxy war. The Times correctly notes that authorizing Ukraine to use ATACMS, which have a range of about 190 miles, has long been a contentious issue in the Biden administration for fear of provoking military retaliations against the U.S. from Russia. This reckless escalation has been authorized despite an acknowledgement from the anonymous U.S. officials who spoke to the New York Times that they, quote, do not expect the shift to fundamentally alter the course of the war. As Anti-War's Dave DeCamp notes, Vladimir Putin said back in September that if NATO allows Ukraine to use Western-supplied weapons for long-range strikes inside Russian territory, it would mean NATO countries, quote, are at war with Russia, end quote. This is about as unambiguous a threat as you'll ever see. New York Times reports that Biden's policy shift comes 2 months before President-elect Donald J. Trump takes office, having vowed to limit further support for Ukraine. And it is here worth noting that last week it was reported by The Telegraph that British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron had been scheming to thwart any attempt by Trump to scale back U.S. support for Ukraine by pushing Biden to authorize long-range missile strikes into Russian territory. But it is also true that the day before the U.S. election, Mike Waltz, Trump's next national security advisor, had himself endorsed the idea of authorizing long-range missile strikes into Russia with the goal of pressuring Moscow to end the war. His plan for disentangling the U.S. from the conflict entails ramping up sanctions on Russia and taking the handcuffs off the long-range weapons we provide Ukraine in order to pressure Putin into eagerly accepting a peace deal. So while this is being framed as an administration that's more hawkish on Russia, executing a maneuver that's designed to hamstring the peace-mongering of an incoming administration that's less favorable to assisting Ukraine, in reality, it may just be goal-assisting the next administration in a policy change it had planned on implementing anyway. Either way, it's insane. Putin ordered changes to Russia's nuclear doctrine in September in order to ward off these sorts of escalations by lowering the threshold at which nuclear weapons could be used to defend the Russian Federation. And they're just barreling right past that bright red line like they barreled over the red lines which led to the invasion of Ukraine. And the fact that they're adding yet another nuclear-armed state into the mix with North Korea just adds more gravy for the nuclear brinkmanship pot roast. At one point in 2022, U.S. intelligence agencies reportedly assessed that the odds of Russia using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine was as high as 50%. But the Biden administration kept pushing forward with this proxy war anyway. These freaks are taking insane risks to advance agendas that stand to yield the slimmest of benefits, even by their own assessments. We are living in dark and dangerous times.